Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. And we are live. What's going on? Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live. It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Wednesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And if it is Wednesday, you should know what that means. It's time for the Wednesday word. That's Wednesday word. Jumping straight into it. Tonight's topic is lean in. As always, I like to share what I mean by my topic. So what do I mean by the topic lean in? What I mean when I talk about the topic lean in, or as I talk about the topic lean in tonight, is really about leaning into our identity, learning what our identity is, leaning into that identity so that we are put in a space that allows us to achieve the impact that we are destined for. It's a lot, but really that's what I mean by leaning into who you are, leaning into what you're about, so that you can have the impact that you inevitably want to have and should have on this planet in your life. So as always, I have 3 tools for the first row that I want to share with you in regards to lean in. So let's jump straight into it. Tool number 1 when it comes to lean in is strive to be you. Now, you guys know how I am on my first tool. I'm always thinking, which tool should I go with first? And really, because leaning in has so much to do with our identity, striving to be who you are is so critical to leaning into who you are. And sometimes it's not simply striving to be who you are in that moment, but who you also inevitably want to be in the future. I always hear that people try to tell me sometimes when I've had to deal with like conflict, or even when I was the cause of conflict, they've told me, oh, walk away, be the bigger person. Be the bigger person. And I've heard that numerous times in my life, to be the bigger person. But the reality is this, is that if I'm being the bigger person or choosing to be the bigger person, the reason that I choose to do that isn't because I want to be the bigger person. It has to be attached to something more powerful than just being the bigger person or turning the other cheek. Has to be more powerful than that. What's going on, Brother Bruce? I forgot to say hi to you. It has to be something that is meaningful to us to be able to say, though everything in me is making me want to do X, I'm going to choose to do Y because this is who I inevitably want to be. So striving for who you want to be, or who you want to be, or striving to be who you are, was the most important tool to bring to the segment this evening. And the reason, again, it was the most important tool is because our identity really guides a lot of the actions that we choose in our lives. And so whenever we are choosing to take on an action, we have to realize that action reflects our identity. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that we don't have errors or lapses in judgment. But what it does mean is that something, like if we're doing something counter our identity, something in us is still in us that actually needs to be either removed or adjusted and tweaked so that it actually fits within our identity. The other thing about striving to be you, or striving to be who you want to be, is really it's about being who you want to be both in that moment and also having the competency to realize that there's somebody that you want to be beyond this moment, and not realizing that you could be jeopardizing not necessarily the identity, but some of the things or the impacts that that identity can have in the future because of the actions that we're choosing in the moment. Don't get me wrong, moments happen in a split second, and sometimes before you know it, you've already gone so far left it's too late to come back right or to correct. However, when we are striving to be who we want to be, what that allows us to do is it allows us to take this, I'm going to say, an unrealistic expectation to simply be the bigger person for the bigger person's sake. It allows us to remove that as our driving motive to, I'm going to say, act correctly in society. It removes that, and it allows us to simply say, yo, this is not who I want to be. It becomes a choice instead of a reaction. Hey, the person that I want to be is a person who's compassionate, who cares about people, who invests in people, who teaches people, who learns from people. That's the person I want to be. And this action, whatever that action may be that's countered that, doesn't allow me to be that person in this moment. And this action also may jeopardize my ability to be that person effectively in the moments to follow. That's why striving to be you is such an important tool. That's why it was tool number one on tonight's lean in topic. And the reality about the last part about striving to be who you are, what it does is it allows us to lean in more effectively. When we are striving to be who we are, not just trying to be or okay being who we are, but when we're striving to be who we are, when we make that honest effort and try to give our all to be who we want to be, what we're in essence doing is we're allowing ourselves to begin to clip those little puppet strings where I call them reactions, but they're reactions. We react to things, but I'm calling them puppet strings. We begin to clip those puppet strings where people can push our buttons or hit our trigger points. I remember when my youngest son, I'm sorry, not youngest son, my oldest son was younger. And I remember having an encounter with his mother's fiance. I think they were either married or fiance at the time. And I remember he had said something to me that made me want to just beat him up. Like, that's the reality. It just made me want to beat him up. But I understood who I wanted to be in that moment. I wanted to be the father available to my son, not the father incarcerated and locked up without access to my son. And so it wasn't about being the bigger person. I could tell you that for sure. The only thing that kept me from making poor decisions in that moment was striving to be the father that I wanted to be. And though he was pushing buttons, there was no button that he would be able to push on me to cause him to be able to cause me to do my little dance with his puppet master strings that would drive me to risk losing the ability to care for my son. So that's tool number one. Strive to be you, or who you want to be, or who you want to become. That is how you begin to lean in to your identity. Tool number one. Tool number two, when it comes to lean in, is align your three pillars. And really, it's align your three I pillars. But I didn't want to put I in there because it was making the graphic look strange. But it's align your three I pillars. I is in the letter I. And I wrote this because it was really hard for me to articulate this without writing it out. But the reality of this, and what I mean when I say align your three I pillars, is this. Our identity, or the identity that we are striving for, should align with the intent surrounding that identity and reflect an impact that aligns with what we desire to give and receive as that person, and in the making of that person. I'm going to read that one more time. Our identity, or the identity that we are striving for, should align with the intent surrounding that identity and reflect an impact that aligns with what we desire to give and receive as that person, and in the making of that person. Aligning your three I pillars is aligning your identity with your intent, with your impact. The identity aspect, we've really gone over that quite a bit already with striving to be who you want to be, or striving to be you. But really, identity is who we are today and who we are seeking to become. Our identity is a living concept. It's not static. A lot of people think, oh, well, my favorite analogy, Al Bundy. In high school, I made 4 touchdowns in a single game, and 40 years later, you're still talking about the 4 touchdowns. A lot of people think that their identity is static, and once you're popular, you're always popular. Once you're famous, you're always famous. Once people like you, they always like you, and that's not what identity is. Identity is a living, breathing representation of who we are, not just from past actions, but who we are also becoming. It'd be no different than me being on Wednesday Words, doing first row content, and then suddenly deviating from that. It wouldn't be like, oh man, back in the day, Roe was a really good person, and so you could still trust him. If I started doing things that were counterintuitive or counterproductive to the identity that I desire, eventually people are like, hey, he might have been a good dude in 2023, but we're in 2028 now, and he hasn't shown that as his characteristics anymore. So that identity that we have is a living, breathing concept. And it's important to remember that, because it's going to come up again later on in this segment. But that's the first pillar, is the identity pillar. The second one is our intent. Understanding what we seek from our identity and intent. I cannot tell you enough how important it is to be honest with yourself about your intentions on things. And the reason I say it's important for you to be honest with yourself is because intent, what we intend for people to receive from us, sometimes isn't what they receive from us. Sometimes, you might say, I just want to get out of here. And you really just need some fresh air, or you just need space or time alone. But the intent that you were trying to say that, hey, I intend to get space and time alone, and I just got to get out of here, could be received by somebody else as you got to get away from me, and you need to be away from me, not necessarily by yourself, but away from me, which is a different interpretation of maybe the same situation. But our intent, being honest about what our intent is, also is a very effective tool for allowing us to lean in to our identity. I think about when I started the first row over 10 years ago now. When I started the first row, I really didn't know what the intention was behind it, but I quickly gained what the intention was behind it. It was just personally, I started off sharing a personal story, personal experience. This is what I dealt with. This is what I learned from that, and I shared that experience. And then it was like, I think I'm going to do that more often, because it's, number one, therapeutic for me to be able to get these thoughts and these experiences off of my chest and to have time to interact with them. But number two, I truly enjoy helping people. I truly enjoy engaging with people, teaching people, and learning from people. So because I enjoy that, it's never been about likes, views, follows. It's really never been about any of that stuff. Because if the intention was for me to become famous as a YouTuber, yeah, I would have quit a long time ago. I'm like, yo, I put up some fire videos and I didn't get any traction on them. I would have quit. And Bruce will attest to this because we've had this conversation quite a bit. Or what would happen is I would have changed my identity. I would have moved away from inspirational content and content that develops growth and leadership and productivity and wisdom and things like that. I would have moved away from that and moved into the more what I'll call clickbait content. And it's interesting because today I was actually updating my YouTube page so that it flowed a little more efficiently. And one of the videos that I looked at, it's probably the most views I've ever had on a video, is like 5,000 views on a video. And the thing is that when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, I wonder why I never did any more of that content. And then I looked at a couple of the comments and I was like, oh, that's why, because that's not what I was looking to inspire. And so again, that intent is very important, that you're completely honest and transparent with yourself about what your intention is regarding your identity. The other thing is, this is something else I had to write. So when I was writing notes on this show, man, I was like, yo, I gotta say that. But this is one of the things that I wrote down here about intent. It says, an arrow shot aimlessly is destined to hit something, but it is rare that it hits its target. When we are not honest about our intentions, or not even intentional about our intentions, what we tend to do is we tend to wander and roam in a circle, and we get frustrated, and we eventually will fall out of the identity that we might want or might not want, because we don't know whether or not we want it. Being intentional has to be in alignment with your identity, because if things go west, if things go south, if things go north, if things go east, your intentions are going to show clearly what your intentions are, regardless of if you wanted to follow that identity or not. So intent is the second pillar. And then the third and the final pillar in this particular tool of aligning our three pillars is impact. And a lot like intention, where, I might have this intention and somebody receives a different intention. Impact is really where we lean in as we create our identity. Like, this is kind of like when you kind of become all in, because as we create our identity, it has an impact, and you can quickly kind of glean what that impact is in certain cases. And if that impact is not the impact that you want, then as you lean into your identity, you might have to ask yourself, hey, wait a minute, what's my intention again? Is my intention this? Because if this is my intention and this is the impact, and those are out of alignment, if any of these components, one, three, two of or three of them are out of alignment, you're going to quickly find out that you're going to have issues in maintaining or in pursuing your identity. The other thing about impact is I use the criminal justice system because we have certain degrees of violations of laws. Number one, we have misdemeanors and felonies, but like you'll have like, let's say a murder charge. You'll have like murder in the first degree, murder in the second degree, murder in the third degree. And really our impact has those same degrees. Now, when it comes to our identity, we want first degree identity, which is typically we have intentionally planned to have this impact. That is what we want our identity and our identity, intention, and impact alignment to look like. We have this identity. These are the intentions behind the identity. Here's the impact, and it was intentional, and it was intentionally planned. That's what we want our identity to be. But sometimes, or our impact to be. Sometimes, though, our impact actually is a second degree impact, which is intentional but unplanned, meaning spur of the moment. Think about this: if you're at the grocery store and somebody, your blinkers on and turn into a parking spot, and somebody pulls into that spot, even though they see your blinker is on for you parking that parking spot. Now, again, you have an identity, you have intention. Now comes the impact. Let's say you get out of the car and you cuss them out. You cuss them out, give them the business, whatever it may be. That might have been intentional. Might have been intentional, but it was unplanned. The intentionality is you intentionally got out of your car and intentionally cussed them out. However, it wasn't like you planned to drive this store. I'm going to leave my blinker on and wait until somebody parks in my spot, and then I'm going to cuss them out. So that's a second degree impact, and it goes in both the negative and the positive. You can have a second degree impact where it's intentional, but it's unplanned. That's positive. I'm not going to give an example because I feel like I'm already on this tool for quite a bit, but the third part of impact is third degree. Third degree is unintentional, unplanned. Like it just happened. I've had some it just happens in my life, some good, some bad, but the unintentional impact that we have, this kind of becomes sometimes it's within our realm of control, but sometimes it's outside of our control. And sometimes it's outside of our control because the priority is first degree, intentionally planned impact. And I'll share again a little more about that in my story tonight. But really, the reality is again, aligning these three pillars is super important. These three I pillars, your identity, your intent, and your impact, are so important because if one of them is out of alignment or all of them are out of alignment, eventually the identity that's really the identity that you have, not the identity that you say you want to have or that you're not working towards, but the identity that you really have, will eventually fall out of alignment and everything will begin to collapse in on itself. So that's tool number 2. Align your three pillars, your three I pillars. And then finally, tool number 3 is simply commit. Man, again, that's why I just got done saying, the identity that you say you have, or the identity that you say you have that you're not really working to have, you have to make a commitment when it comes to leaning in. You have to commit. You have to commit to vamping that identity. You have to commit to revamping that identity. You have to commit to evolving in order to achieve your goal. And leaning in to our identity really is like a forward trust fall. I don't know if you ever did those things in elementary school or in school and primary school or whatever school, but where you have somebody behind you and it's like, okay, you're going to fall back, free fall, and I'm going to catch you. And you lean, you fall back, and some people can't do it because they don't trust people. I struggle with the trust fall personally, but this is you leaning into you. And so you're basically falling forward and trusting that your identity is going to catch you, and not only catch you, but to lead you to the place that you want to be at, or the places that you want to be. The hardest part about leaning into our identity is trusting that it will catch us. But the reality is this: we have two choices when it comes to leaning into our identity. We can either not lean into our identity, and that is us being who we think will be accepted by others. And I always call this allowing other people to spin your beats. And when I say beats, I mean your heartbeats. Look, we all have our own heart. We don't know how many beats it has. But every time you're doing something that you think somebody else wants you to do, but you're not really interested in doing it, and your heart's not really in it, I hate to break the bad news, you're allowing somebody else to spin your beats. And sometimes that's cool because, like I said, I'm a person who's about compassion. So there's times where I'll talk to people and I may not want to do that, but I never give anything that I am not willing to give. There's a difference between want and willing. I'm willing to give, but I may not want to give. There's a difference between that. But the other choice that you have outside of allowing somebody else to spin your beats is to spin your own beats. And that is really working or doing the work to be who you want to be, doing the work to become who you want to become. But that's going to take a commitment. There's no way around committing to leaning into your identity because times are going to get rough. Times are going to get tough. People are going to lie on you. It's all going to come down to, what do you know your identity to be? And are you willing to stand on that? If you are, then congratulations to you. You've gotten a pretty big step out of the way. But if you're not, you're going to have to figure out how to release some of those puppet master strings so that you can truly start moving towards an identity that suits you. So that's what I have for you guys tonight. Really quick, let's go over the 3 tools for the first row when it comes to lean in. Tool number 1 is, again, strive to be you or who you want to become. Our identity is a living concept. Simultaneously, we are working on the now and we are working on the future. Tool number 2 is align your 3 pillars, your 3 I pillars. That is identity, intent, and impact. And I'm going to read this one more time because, again, this was really powerful for me today as I was finishing up some notes on this topic. Our identity, or the identity that we are striving for, should align with the intent surrounding that identity and reflect an impact that aligns with what we desire to give and receive as that person and in the making of that person. And last but definitely not least is our commitment. We must maintain commitment to who we say we are. We don't have to, let me rescind that statement. It's important to remain committed to who you say you are. And if who you are changes, then it's important to shift accordingly. Make the commitment to revamp, and evolve along the way to your goal of who you want to be. So those are the tools that I have for you guys this evening. Hey, what's going on, Ayala? That I have for you guys this evening regarding the Wednesday word. As always, I have a personal story that I would like to share with you, something that really actually shifted me to this topic. That's why I was writing notes today on this topic, because it's been a week of having to lean into who I am. And this wasn't the initial Wednesday word topic this week, but it bumped the Wednesday word topic that I was going to do because it was important and it's very relevant and present in my life right now. And so this story is called The Bigger Person. And this week, again, I've had multiple experiences where one would probably look to me and say, hey, just be the bigger person. I cannot tell you enough how much that is not enough motivation for me as an individual who is focused on growth, focused on improvement, focused on development. Being the bigger person doesn't hold as much weight with me. It's almost like being a kid when you're a kid and you do something wrong and your parents say, what do you say? I'm sorry, I don't mean that. Or somebody gives you something. What do you say? Thank you. If I was thankful, I would have said thank you. And I might be, but maybe I'm a kid and I just don't give that information. But this week, there were some things that were said about my character that were not true. And it was hard to hear that information knowing that it wasn't true. And part of, I think, anytime somebody says something about your character that you feel is untrue, it's natural to want to be defensive. And sometimes in our effort to be defensive, we remove ourselves from defensive and go on offensive. And I've had a history of that in the past of like, yo, I'm defensive, but really I'm about to attack. However, I started thinking about what the person was saying, and it really went to the 3 I's for me: my identity, who I know myself to be, who I know myself to become, who I know what I am becoming, the intentions behind my actions that I choose, and then the impact. And really, what I found is that this person had a third degree impact. The impact to them was not intentional, it was not planned. The impact to them was, unfortunately, a collateral impact from a decision that I made. However, the impact of the intentional decision that I made was a first degree. It was planned and it was intentional. And that, I don't know if I said this in that tool, but that is where we want our actions, our impacts of our actions to be. So sometimes though, you may have a first degree impact and it's great. Your identity is in alignment, you got your intent going right, and you had a first degree impact. That's awesome. But that doesn't mean that you won't have secondary and tertiary impacts in regards to the choices that you make or the identity that you're leaning into. The other situation was I had somebody speaking to me in a very aggressive manner. And I grew up really feisty and I was a fighter. Like I was a fighter. I believe it at that. And so in this conversation where this person is speaking to me and they're aggressively pointing at me during the conversation, I just had to ask myself, like, yo, is that who I want to be, or is that not who I want to be? And do I need to try to be something different? Because I know for myself that the person I used to be would become very confrontation forward. Like, yo, who are you disrespecting? However, that's not, I don't need to initiate with that. Don't get me wrong. If I need to become aggressive, I have no problems with becoming aggressive. But in the situation I was in, it was like this person is in an emotional state. I want to be in my identity. I want to lean forward into my identity. I want to be somebody who is understanding that this person is in an emotional state, and this aggressive pointing that they're having at me in this moment is not so much about me. It's about the frustration that they're in and maybe the defensive stance that they're in from some of the triggers that they're experiencing. So I want to be able to take a moment, step back, and lean into my identity instead of taking a moment, stepping back and squaring up. So for me, that is, well, for me, that is where I I went to leaning forward into the identity that I want and who I want to be. And I simply said, "Hey, can you stop pointing at me like that?" And you know what they said? They said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize." Because they were able to see immediately that, yo, I am kind of aggressively pointing at this person, and this is not where my frustration is coming from. So why am I doing this? It's because I'm frustrated, but I'm frustrated at the wrong person. And so really in both of those situations, I shifted to who I am striving to be. I'm not there yet. Don't get that messed up. I'm not there yet. But I shifted to who I'm striving to be rather than falling back and saying, "Oh, is that who you think I am? Well, I'm going to show you I'm that person. That's not who I want to be. And I believe that you're mistaken on who you think I am. Oh, is that how you want to come at me? Well, I'm going to show you as a man to man, we can get down. That's not who I want to be. And so why would I shift to that? I want to lean into who I want to be. And so I was able to, fortunately, I'm actually proud that I was able to align my three pillars in real time in both of those moments and say, "Hey, look, this is who I want to be. This is what I get on here every week and talk about." And it doesn't mean I get it right every week. Doesn't mean I get it right every time. And I'm happy to share both the good and the bad of when I get it right or wrong. But I was proud of myself for being able to align my identity with my intentions and with my impact. And then the last part, excuse me, the last part is in both of those scenarios, again, me being the bigger person was not enough motivation to keep me from saying, "Oh, we're going to go tit for tat, we're going to play the petty petty." No problem, I can play the petty petty game with you. It wouldn't have been enough to keep me from going in there. But when we are clear, and this is important, when we are clear on what our identity is, who we want to be, and we practice, because it's going to take practice, leaning into that identity, we become quicker at acknowledging who we want to be when we're dealing with challenges, conflict, and situations that are unpleasant. So that's really what tonight is about as far as the lean in topic. It's about leaning into who you want to be, even when it's uncomfortable to lean in, because at no point is your identity stagnant. At no point is your identity static, meaning stationary. At every point in our lives, we are constantly tweaking and revamping our identity. The only thing that makes it tweak and revamp is the decisions that we make when we're put into situations that are both pleasant and unpleasant. So that's what I have for you guys this evening. I really hope that you have enjoyed tonight's topic, Lean In. As always, we do have some upcoming content coming on the first row. I just actually looked at my calendar this week and realized that I was supposed to have a Financial Matters show on this Saturday, but I bumped it to next Saturday because I have things I have to do this Saturday. The upcoming content that we have coming down the pipeline for the first row, actually before the first row, let me jump in on this one really quick. The L3 Perspective. My brother Glenn and brother Cam, they have a podcast that they release. They drop new releases every single Tuesday, 5 a.m. In fact, I think I have the link here because this will take you. You can follow the link on the screen, or you can follow the link, bam, in the live chat. But every Tuesday they drop their content, the L3 Perspective, which is about life, love, and leadership. Great content, great brothers, very insightful. If you can get over there and check out their content, I promise you will not be disappointed. After that, next week, we are back with our third, the men's circle. And we're going to be talking about vision. We're going to talk about being visionaries as men. But that will be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's April 25th, Tuesday. Yeah, at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then after that, we have the Wednesday Word, as always. The Wednesday Word will be on Wednesday, April 26th at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then last but definitely not least, we'll be bringing in Financial Matters, which is the debt to income credit 101 segment that we're going to be doing in regards to finance. That is a Saturday morning event, Saturday, April 29th, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Look, I'm all for helping and providing financial information, but I'm not going to tie up my entire weekend with financial information because I deal with finances throughout the entire work week. So that's what I have for you guys this week. I really appreciate you guys tuning in live. As always, if you are watching live, thank you. I'm happy to engage with you if you're watching live. If you're watching via the replay, I'm happy to engage with you. And up to the first 7 days that the content is out. After that, I move on to the next content. But if I do see something and I can have time to respond, I will respond. But other than that, I thank you guys for tuning in live tonight. Until the next time, if you like this video, share it. If you share it, like it. I'm always happy to engage on all platforms, social media, or wherever you can find at First Row. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.